I can let that music go forever and ever. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Another special edition of Bomb3r's Hit List. With me is my co-host, Rock and Rant. How you doing, Rock?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's Wednesday, so let's get to the Thursday and Friday, I think. With us tonight, we're going to have a couple people from LA. Let's get your name right. It's LA Football
Network.
There we go. LA Football Network. We have Alfred Rowe, Coach Rowe. We'll go with that. And Jamal, is it Modney?
Modney, yep.
Modney,
and everyone calls me the Madman. So
the Madman, okay. LAFB Jams. I like that name. Anyway, tonight, this is going to be a fun show. We're starting to do additional collaborations across the country. And this is one that Rock thought would be really, really valuable. And we're just really glad you guys were able to join us. But we're also going to have Sergeant Pickles is going to be joining us in a little while. He's really running the western arm of the Mafia family. And we're looking forward to, you guys are USC, UCLA, right?
Yes, sir. Final.
And then they're going to cover Washington. I don't know if we're going to get anybody from Oregon. What do you guys think? You think Oregon's going to come and play nice with us?
I think they'll come. I'm not sure if they'll play nice, but
they'll come. It's going to be about halftime late. So.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're like the Cowboys. They have this national championship aspiration, but they know they'll never get there.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? So I think that's a good way to look at it. We would love to have an Oregon Duck. If there's somebody out there that thinks they can do this or is already doing a show and maybe wants to join in with these collaborations we're doing, certainly the Big Ten West is fertile ground, and we'd love to have you. So I'm going to turn some time over to you guys. Kind of tell us about yourselves, what your shows are like, and kind of what your interest is in as you guys move into the Big Ten. Let's start with you. Let's go with Jamal.
Well, first of all, thanks so much, guys, for having both me and Coach Rowe on the show. It's that's kind of the beauty of this new Big Ten in so many ways, where we all kind of get to come together and unique and interesting people get to come together and talk about the sport we all love and learn about each other's positionalities and fandoms, and so it's a privilege to be here. A little bit about the LA Football Network, where Southern California's fastest growing digital sports content platform. So we've got podcasts, we've got written articles, website, the whole deal there. And we're all things LA football. So Rams, Chargers, USC, UCLA, we went 25 years without a pro team from the mid 90s till about the late 2010s. And then all of a sudden we had two pro teams, out of nowhere. Yep. And so, there was a real void. LA now is the only city in America with 4 major football brands. And so we saw an opportunity that, folks were either thinking kind of too broad or too narrow. There was an opportunity for us to start something special. And we have over the last 5 years, thanks to our founder, Ryan Dyrud. And so, it's been a terrific team, and we're really an LAFB family. And, the two shows that we've got that are of most interest to this audience. The first is the Bruin Bible that I do with Will Decker, which is sort of all things UCLA football. And we're also now starting to venture into UCLA basketball. So a lot of fun there, and in terms of the kind of the crossover shows. And then with my great friend, Coach Rowe here, Coach Rowe, myself, and Ryan, we do the Salute to Troy show, which is the USC counterpart show. And have a great time doing it. And then, every once a year, we all kind of come together for that Victory Bell game. And I can't keep anybody happy because I'm a graduate of both schools. And so the fans are, pissed off that I went to the other. So it's always fun to be kind of public enemy number one sometimes. But it's a ton of fun, and really happy to be here.
Coach Rowe, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I actually played at USC from 2006 to 2008. I was in the coaching realm, Division II football for about 6 years. One of my good friends that I grew up with put me in touch with Ryan, said, "Hey, you want to do a show?" And I was like, "Yeah." I ended up doing a show, started off very slow. And I'll tell a lot of people this, and you guys know in the podcast world, that first year, you're only going to get 100 viewers, right? And then next thing you know, you got 4,000 subscribers, you're getting about 2,000 views a day. The good thing about our show is, man, we don't fanboy a lot. And if you go back and look at our past season, it was not a lot of fanboy. We tell the truth. We tell it how it is. We do break down a lot of X's and O's. I break down a lot of X's and O's, but we get into like a good perspective. We got a co-host, Candace. She tells it from her perspective. Jamal, we call him the mad scientist. He gets it from his perspective. You better bring your pencil and paper and be ready to go. I always tell him, are you ready for your thesis? Ryan gives it from his perspective, being a transplant from Colorado, coming out here, how he went to Long Beach State and ended up being a USC fan because Long Beach State didn't have any football. So he always USC games. Now he ends up being a USC fan. So we get it from all realms of life, right? Candace was an athlete at SC. She's a world-class track and field runner. I actually played at USC. You know, Jamal was a student there, and then Ryan is a transplant fan. So you get that perspective. But like I said, the main thing about it is we tell the truth. We don't fanboy it. So even if you get a win, there's a couple of our podcasts where there were wins and we were not happy.
Right.
The Stanford game was a very good one. Our fans hated us because they said we were too hard on them, but we predicted the future. And the problems we saw in Stanford end up happening 4 or 5 games later, and it became the truth. And now people are like, whoa, you guys are right. So that's pretty much the Detroit. It's a hard-hitting, truthful show, but at the end of the day, we still do love the Trojans, support the Trojans. Like I said, with the Victory Bell show is a great time. We get together with Thrill, Jamal, and bring that cross-time rival together. We go on site, have a lot of shows. Yeah, it's great.
I think what's really cool and what is a synergy with what we do is like I'm a fan of BYU, right? And Moen is a fan of Ohio State. And Ute is a fan of Utah, right? Obviously. Rock and Rant is a Miami guy. So we have collaborations all across the country just for that reason. Just for that reason. And I think it's really important that the relationships that we have here, telling the truth to power, is very difficult to do. It's very, very hard to do. Now, Coach Rowe played, so he probably has inroads other people don't have in to some of these schools, but generally they don't really like dissent, do they?
They don't like the sin of what?
Dissent. They don't like to hear bad things about their
Well, it depends who you are, because believe it or not, this past year we had a big Oklahoma Sooner following. So
okay. All right.
the Oklahoma Sooner following was kind of on our side some days. In the beginning, no, they did not. And then it was kind of weird because, and Jamal could attest to this, people started saying like, man, you know what? That's actually right. Like, you're telling the truth. Like, I see where you're coming from. And, you know, this was probably one of the most disappointing years since, what year was that, Jamal? You always mention it for SC. You mentioned it all the time.
Since 19, since 19, yeah.
Since 19, yeah. It was one of the most disappointing years since 19. And so they kind of, at first they were bucking against it. And then after a while, they all started, they jumped on the train. Was like, man, you guys are right. Like, you guys saw it way before we did. And Jamal saw it San Jose State, and that was the first game of the season. And I saw it Stanford. So it's they don't like it, but after a while, you put it in their face enough, they have to accept it.
What's also interesting is that the fan psyches of the two teams are different. And so sometimes when you're counter, it's not necessarily whether it's positive or negative. It's just being counter to the fan psyche. For instance, the UCLA football fans, they're ready to be doom and gloom at any turn, because it's been 25 years since UCLA football has really been at the top of the rankings nationally. So they're always kind of expecting the next turn to be the one that kind of takes the team off the cliff. So when you bring positivity, when you bring energy to kind of your takes and your perspective, that's actually a breath of fresh air for the UCLA audience, because they're always kind of on edge of something bad happening. Conversely, SC fans, SC could be 3-9, and SC is considered the greatest school of all time in everything. Going to win every game 50-0. And so when you kind of have to hold their feet to the fire and really kind of show the mirror to those fans, that's totally different. They're not used to that in so many ways. So then that becomes the breath of fresh air. So it's interesting kind of being the breath of fresh air on both sides of the teams, given just the psyche of the fans.
That's exactly right. I'm going to give some time over to Rock and Rant. I didn't get a chance to introduce him properly. So, Rock, you are thinking forward. You found these guys and thought that they might be somebody to collaborate with. Tell everybody where you're currently at. Where's Miami, and how do you see the collaborations of different schools and conferences really work to cover college football?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Coach Rowe and Jamal for being on, and for your team for jumping on. When I watched some of the content in the channels, I thought it'd be a really good fit. And in the first 5 minutes, it's clear of the value you guys could bring to it. So I appreciate that. And then as a Miami guy who lives in Los Angeles, by the way, guys, I feel like an affinity because the best way that you two would understand that not everybody else would is that Miami is basically if USC got dropped in Westwood.
Right.
And had part of USC's history and had UCLA's drive time to a stadium, right?
That's exactly right.
So that's the best way. So to bring about it, and because I'm in LA, I basically watch both teams all of the time, and I wanted Miami to play USC forever, and I'm still super thankful that there was a hurricane in 1998. That delayed.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. I
still have nightmares. Rock and Rant. I mean, I'll wake up in a cold sweat every few weeks on that game. The Brad Melsby fumble game, the Phantom fumble game.
Weren't you guys like 11-0? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was like 10-1.
That was a win, and you're in the BCS National Championship game. And the game got rescheduled because of the hurricane. It was supposed to be mid-September, and it was December 5th. And Adrian James went crazy on the 110th ranked defense in the country. Yep.
Go ahead.
That's like UCLA's equivalent. That's like UCLA's equivalent of shout out Moen, the Ohio State penalty in the last play in Miami versus Ohio State. Stakes are a little bit higher, but it could have been that much higher for UCLA.
No.
So I like being in this neutral conversation because both schools to me are amazing in so many different ways, and I've been fortunate enough to see both play. But the reason why I reached out initially is because you guys are, and I put it on my post that we're promoting the show, is like Texas and Oklahoma. And I definitely want to go into the coaching changes in Calimony, and there's a ton of questions. We probably have 25 episodes worth, or at least I do, of questions for you guys and takes. But a lot of our audience that Nate and team have built up has been around the business of it, the conference realignment, what's affected their schools and everything. And as much as Texas and Oklahoma kind of started this, it was a spark. What UCLA and USC did was sort of the fire, right? Because there's a lot more downstream effects that are playing out. So I'm curious as we lead into that conversation and how that maybe, how you guys see it eventually back into what's going on right now is, how did that all materialize to you? Like, what are the biggest myths about how that all started that you guys know to the degree that you're plugged in, and it's pretty clear that you're either plugged in or the postmortems already happened? Like, how did that all start from the USC first, UCLA first, the context, that rumor mill before everything then went public and imploded? Because that's kind of like the zone we're in now, just without the lawsuits.
Well, hang on. Let me interrupt really quick, Coach. Sorry. Don't apologize. I need to get some shout outs for people that are watching this. Let's do a little business. By the way, Rock, keep that question up so Coach and Jamal can answer it in a little bit. First of all, let's just get our first shout outs out. Buckshot Kids, first guy in. Good to see you, Buckshot. Oh, hey, at the College Football Mafia. Timothy Green is next. And Timothy, who's another member, says, let's get ready for another interesting and fun-filled show. Then we go Joaquin Morales. Hey, Bomber and college football family. College Football Mafia family. Don't forget to smash the like button, and it's free. Let's go. All right. I'm going to bring in Pickles. Pickles, just give me a second. I'm doing some shout outs. Let's see here. RT, who's another member, says, I've already smashed that like button. I can't smash it any harder. Come on, people. It's easy. It's right underneath the video. It's a little thumb. Just push on it, and it really helps us with the analytics. And then the last shout out I'm going to get to, because we're so busy, is BR, he was one of our founding members, actually. Says, hey, all, I haven't chatted much lately, but have been watching. The show is growing and adding pieces like crazy. Congrats. Thank you, BR. It's all because of you and all the membership support and the super chat support. We were a bunch of guys just sitting on the side of the road talking football before. Now we're actually, and we're up on plane, I think, doing some good work. Let's see here. A couple more. I lied. There are a couple more. Moen is here. Moen's one of the founding members of our channel. That would be Moen Vision, says howdy. And then Conundrum says Jamal can't lose. Covered his best with USC and UCLA. Lol. I have actually never heard that before. I'm sure there are a lot of people that do that. Fine universities. I've just never heard of one that did it. So that was interesting. We will have to dive into that. Let's see if there's anybody else. Oh, two more. I keep lying. Illini Ted, another member, says UCLA will fit right into the Big Ten West. West Psyche, not sure about the other three. We'll see, Illini Ted. We will see. And let's see. I think that's where we're going to stop. All right. Sergeant Pickles, late to the party, first to the window.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just like 90 seconds, and then we're going to get right to questions.
Yeah, I was listening along as best I could to the intros. Apologies for the delay. I got 3 young kids at home, so if you hear background noise, that's what's going on. Sergeant Pickles, lifelong Husky fan, as you can see. I'm not an alumni. I'm not that smart, but I love my Huskies. And I host the Big West Mafia show every Monday here on the Mafia channel, and I'm really glad to meet all of you guys. Been trying to reach out to more of the West Coast folk as we journey eastward into a new conference. So be a good opportunity to get your perspective going into the new conference.
Definitely. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. The last thing I want to do is remind everybody, make sure you follow us all on Twitter. You guys got their tags under our pictures. Go to Twitter, follow everybody. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Make sure you're putting all your notifications on so that on YouTube and on Twitter, you know when the shows are coming up. And lastly, consider becoming a member.
Want to become a member of the College Football Mafia family? Simply select the Join button from our homepage. There are several options with their own unique benefits to choose from. You can also set yourself to auto-accept gifted membership by selecting the gift settings options as shown.
Thanks again for that, Moen. And lastly, make sure if you want to leave a comment, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section. If you're not a member, we'll try to prioritize that. If you are a member, we try to prioritize all the member comments. And lastly, we read all super chats. So, Pickles, can you mute yours really quick? I'm hearing some background noise. I'm not sure if it's you or not.
I've been muting mine when I'm not speaking.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we had a question. Rock asked really quick, and boy, an hour is going to go by fast, guys. We'll have to see about that. So, Coach Rowe, what were you? Do you have the answer? Do you know what that question was again?
Yeah. So it's pretty much us going over to the Big Ten, and to start it, you have to understand there's no USC without UCLA, right? And you can either look at it as little brother, little cousin, or like favorite cousin or anything like that. And so when this thing happened, it was going to happen with UCLA regardless, right? So they pretty much did whatever they can to make this partnership happen, right? When you look at the Battle of Victory Bell, and we talk about this all the time on our show, you're playing against kids that you grew up with, kids that you played with all your life in Pop Warner, kids that you went to high school with. Some of your best friends might be across the sideline with you. Like, there's no way they were going to not continue that rivalry and keep it happening. The issue was the failure of Larry Scott. And Larry Scott not doing anything to make the conference better. When you look at this year's conference, this was probably the best years in the conference probably since I played in the Pac-10.
I agree with you.
You had some of the best quarterbacks in the conference in a long time, and this was definitely a springboard that Larry Scott could have used. Well, Larry Scott was gone, but whoever the new commissioner is, who's not employed anymore, but they could have used this to springboard to get a major big contract. When everybody went to the media day, USC and UCLA already knew there was not going to be no contract, and they had to make a move because they knew that they were going to get better, and they had to put themselves in the best situation possible to be able to get votes for a chance to get into the playoff. How do you do that? Well, you go to the Big 12. The Big 12 is not that great, right? You have Oklahoma and you have Texas. Like, you have to look at it in reality. I know this is a Big 12 show, and I'm sorry to throw the jab, and people are probably going to kill me, but it's Oklahoma and Texas. Like, you have to look at it that way. And they're talking about leaving, right? So now what do? You go to the next best thing. You look at the Big 10. You make the Big 10 work. And when you look at it historically, the Pac-10, Pac-12 never really struggled against the Big Ten. I know a lot of people talk about travel and all those things that really matter. I went to Ohio State. We played in Ohio State. Wasn't that big of a deal. Like, so now you start talking TV contracts and everything like that. Well, UCLA comes in and they say, well, we're going to need a little bit of help. It's no problem. We got you. Like, at the end of the day, we still support each other. Now, what happened with Cal, I hope they took him to dinner first before what they did to him today. But, but I mean, Cal just wasn't good enough in any sport, right? So then you go and look at Washington, Oregon. Oregon had to make a decision. Am I going to be a big fish in a small pond and go to the Big 12, or am I going to go compete with the best? Oregon decided to go compete with the best. They needed to bring a partner with them for travel partner reasons for other sports. Because if you don't know, like basketball has a travel partner, volleyball has a travel partner. Those types of sports have travel partners. So when basketball plays on Wednesday, and let's say Washington plays on Wednesday in Purdue, then Oregon will play on Wednesday at Indiana, and then on the Friday game, they'll flop. Same with volleyball. So travel partners. They need a travel partner. Who's the next best thing? UW. Where it is unfortunate is Oregon State. Oregon State is a trending stock right now, and they're going up, and they've been competitive completely every year, and they've been getting better and better and better, 8, 9, 10 wins. But it wasn't in enough time. Does Oregon State deserve a Big Ten bid? I believe so, because I think they're getting better, right? If you put them in the bottom of the Big Ten, they could compete with the bottom of the Big Ten, right? If you put them at the top, they can't compete. But are they good enough to make a bowl game out of the Big Ten? At least win 6 to 8? Yes. I think they don't.
Coach, and this is what we do here, right? This is part of the conversation. And this is something I think we ought to follow up. I need to get our pictures back bigger. Where's the money to bring in an Oregon State? Right now, Washington and Oregon only got half rate. To bring in a Oregon State, it'd have to be like at a quarter share.
That at this point, you take it, because if you're Oregon State, you take it. And let me tell you why you take it. A quarter share is better than what they're getting now.
Yeah, I don't think the Big Ten offers a quarter share. I'm saying, yeah, I don't think there's the money there to bring them in.
No, I understand, and they're just not good enough yet. Like I said, they ran out of time. Do they?
Right, I agree. Utah the same way, right?
Right. Yeah, they just ran out of time. So that happens. So then you got a team who's out of a conference who's doing pretty well, and then you got a team who's out of a conference that probably won't get any better, right? But long story short, it was a move that had to be made for the betterment of the universities, right?
Right.
So UCLA and USC started it off, and I'm pretty sure the conversation happens with the presidents and the ADs at Washington, Oregon, like, hey, how do we make this move, and what do you think is best? And then that move happened, right?
Coach, if I could piggyback just off of the kind of the USC UCLA motivation, I think what's important to understand is that both schools were motivated to do something for different reasons. And Coach talked about Larry Scott, that it's famous that he just kind of undercut the conference, got way too locked into a long-term TV deal that was really not good at all with the whole Pac-12 network, Pac-12 After Dark, all of that. SC always had an eye, because their other rival, you got to remember, is Notre Dame. So the SC always had this flirtation with potentially going independent. Rock and Rand, you talk about USC kind of being the Miami of the West. The other comp to USC very much is Ohio State. It's kind of the big bully in the region, and they're kind of the outlier and all of those things. So SC always felt a little outsized for the Pac-12, and so they always kind of had their eye. What would it be like if we were like Notre Dame and we were independent? Now, on the UCLA side, UCLA was facing $60 million in debt, athletic department debt, given to, the dead money to coaches, former football coaches, Jim Mora, former basketball coaches, Steve Alford, and on the list. So UCLA had to do something to sort of fix their liquidity situation. And so Martin Jarman was the new athletic director at UCLA with a ton of ties to the Big Ten and most notably Ohio State. So now it's kind of revisionist history. Did Rick Caruso of USC call first, or did Martin Jarman of UCLA call first? But the reality is they both kind of came together. SC said, look, we need a better media rights deal because we need to kind of get a better platform. UCLA said, we got to get more revenue because we got to get out of this debt situation. Let's do it together. when each party kind of talked to the Big Ten, they said, look, we'd be interested, but you got to bring the other, because there was always kind of this tie of saying, hey, USC football and UCLA basketball kind of coming together in the same conference would be very attractive. And then the rest became history. But it's interesting. They were both motivated to do something and kind of came together.
I will say this.
Yeah,
this is only a 5-year thing. In 5 years, there won't be any conferences. There'll be big boys and there'll be the rest.
Yeah, it's possible for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what things are trending that way, right? Lawsuits and everything else. It's not looking great. Certainly out of the P4, but even in the P4, there's some slacking in there for sure. Pickles, you didn't get a chance to answer or ask a question at the beginning. This is UCLA and USC right in front of you.
Yeah.
You were left out of that conversation at Washington. How'd that make you guys feel?
Traditionally, I understand USC is the premier brand of the conference, but up until the recent rise of Oregon, Washington was that number 2, traditionally successful, was one of the other powerhouses out in the West. And we went through some tough times, mid-2000s, had an 0-12 season, and, it's been a rebuilding process. Chris Peterson finally put us back on the national stage. And it was interesting that I understood why the Big Ten only took 2 schools. It's a huge step to suddenly branch across the country. And I understood the perception. You don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to be seen as taking an axe to a rival power conference, because had they taken USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington at the same time, you're effectively cutting the head off the Pac-12 in that moment. And I know that these presidents, despite our focus on athletics, they have a relationship with one another in all these conferences. They take jobs in other conferences, and those relationships matter. And there would be a lot of bad blood on the university side if they were seen as killing off the revenue source for a whole conference. It's a lot easier to stomach when you're essentially leaving only a couple schools out. And they were able to get Washington and Oregon at an opportune time. You can get them at half rate because the position the Pac-12 was in. They don't have a current media deal. And from, I'm not pretending to be an insider, but everything I've understood is that Washington was really keen on getting to the Big Ten and was okay with taking the half cut. They were the president's pick, and Oregon was the TV pick. They're natural rivals. It makes sense to bring them together if you were going to make a move like that. So, Fox said yes, president said yes, and off we go. I'm curious what your guys' perspective is that I don't mean to take shots at my Bruin friends, but my personal opinion is they were a little bit blessed by geography, especially to get a full share. I'm curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, no, Sergeant Pickles, it's a great question. I think part of it is also you have to look from an investment perspective on what the potential is. And, I think sometimes we always equate past performance or current performance with how things are going to be always. And I think the Big Ten realized, look, if we kind of think about this longer term, where you've got things like the transfer portal, you've got things like the LA weather, you've got things like NIL, you've got things like a big market, you start sort of zooming out and seeing UCLA, you look at the campus, you look at the academics, you look at the alumni base, you look at its footprint in Los Angeles. UCLA in many ways in football is kind of the sleeping giant. I mean, if UCLA kind of figures out their potential, this is another potential power in the hands of the Big Ten. And so you're willing to sort of make that, you're sort of willing to make that bet because structurally, when you sort of look at endowment size, when you look at amount of players, relatively speaking in the NFL, you look at facilities, and you just look at alumni base, USC football and UCLA football are not that far apart from each other structurally. Now, performance is a whole different matter. Number of Heisman winners, number of Rose Bowls, number of national championships. But when you just look at the bones, you look at the bones of the ecosystem, there's not that much difference. The big challenge with UCLA historically has just been prioritizing football as sort of this cultural must-have with the university ecosystem. They're always focused on medical and basketball and social justice and research and all of these other things that are going on. If they actually shift the mentality to say, hey, listen, we want to be football first or football in the top 5, there's a huge upside there. And I think the Big Ten saw an opportunity for upside.
What do you think?
That's
Coach?
fair. Real quick, I would say I agree with you. Again, this wasn't me trying to take shots at Bruins. It's just kind of hashing through the process of how these decisions were made. And I agree, UCLA has as much upside as nearly any team in the country that isn't already perceived at that upper echelon. And it made sense to me for the Big Ten to just carve out the entire Los Angeles market. Whatever college football fans are there, they're going to be watching one of those two LA schools, or there's a lot of Big Ten alumni also in Los Angeles. So you don't want to be sharing that market. It made a lot of sense for me. I appreciate your insight on that. And, we can have our discussions about why UCLA is in this position, but, Pac-12 fans kind of know that both Cal and UCLA, they're starting the 100-meter race with cinder block shoes. They're saddled with the University of California system and all the politics that go with it. It's
the
unfortunate,
politics,
but
the admissions,
Yeah.
and kind of the visibility of the admissions. USC is a phenomenal institution as well, but they have more opportunity kind of being private in terms of carving out different admission standards for football players in a way that the UC schools just can't, because everything's got to be sort of public and sort of uniform. So that's a huge challenge as well.
Rock, I know you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, before we move towards more of the transition and what's going on and maybe analogies to what's going on in ACC, I am just curious, do either of you think there was a moment in time where this road that the Pac-12, now Pac-2, went down, where even borderline competent commissionering and administrating could have prevented what wound up happening? Or is it just almost a matter of time, even if somebody as wildly bad at their job wasn't in charge?
Coach, I'll hand it over to you in 60 seconds here. I think there were 3 moments that could have changed. And it was sort of 3 moments, frankly, over the last 15 years. The first moment for the Pac-12 leadership, Pac-10 leadership at the time, I'd go all the way back to 2008. If you recall, 2008 was USC's last great team with Mark Sanchez and that great defense and Cushing and Clay Matthews. That team went 12-1, and they got shut out of the national championship game because that was the year of Tebow and Colt McCoy and Sam Bradford. And that was, most USC fans would say, that was the greatest defense USC had post 1980. I mean, the last 45 years, that was the best defense. And that was right off of the piggyback of the Pete Carroll was still there. It was still humming 3 years removed from that Texas USC game. The fact SC got shut out of that game, the tide was already shifting, to other parts of the country. And so the Pac-12 leadership had an opportunity there to say, okay, we need to maybe either realign or think a little bit differently about our resources. The second moment was right when OU and Texas left. And so then there's an opportunity to say, okay, we got to really get coordinated and tightly linked with our members so they don't start going shopping. And I think there was just a lack of negligence. And truthfully, I think just some arrogance from George Kliavkoff thinking that nothing was going to happen. And then finally, I would say up until, last summer, I mean, there was still an opportunity to keep this conference together even after SC and UCLA made the move. Kliavkoff was just so steadfast in trying to get 50 to 60 million annually for every team. He could have taken the Big 12 rate. He could have gone down to about 35 or 40. All of the financial projections, I mean, logically, we're saying 35 to 40 a year. He just was sort of blind to that. And there's kind of an interesting world where SC could have gone to the Big 10 and the Pac-12 could have still stayed together, because there was actually a world where a lot of folks within UCLA were saying, if SC goes, we can sort of use that as a leverage to come back to the Pac-12 at a greater market share. And also it could be a great recruiting tool to say, hey, you get all of the things of LA and you don't have to travel that much. So there was actually kind of even a world where they could have even split at the 11th hour, but Kliavkoff just didn't show any kind of vision and understanding of what the market was. There was even an opportunity to do kind of an Apple streaming deal. When you talk about Silicon Valley and the Cal Stanford schools, there was an opportunity to do that, and he shot that down. So I think there were 3 moments, 08, 09, 20, and then last year. And unfortunately, they just didn't want to get a deal done. There were plenty of deals on the table.
I think it just goes back to one moment real quick. I think it goes back to one moment. And I think it was 2009, 2010, when they had the chance to create the first super conference ever in college football. And Larry Scott sat on that deal, and ESPN came into Texas and said, here's the Longhorn Network. Texas said, thank you, but no thank you. And after that, there was no progress made towards the conference. And we slowly saw the conference decline. And, you know, we could say it's Klekoff, but I think it goes further than Klekoff. And I think it's Larry Scott who never, ever compromised on that deal. When you have a whole conference ready to join with you and create a super conference to beat a conference that's cheating, and they know they have to get out ahead of them. So, I mean, I think Larry Scott, when he didn't have any momentum after that deal failed and trying to get the conference back to where it was, I think that was the dying moment right there. And right then and there, I think it was always 1 foot out, and the best opportunity that came, teams were going to take it.
All right. I think we've talked a lot about how everybody moved and now we're in a different world, right? So rather than talking about what the realignment was over the last 2 years, let's look forward. Let's talk about these schools and how they think they're going to fit in this new, bigger Big Ten, all right? So let's start with you, Pickles. Just a real quick answer. Where does Washington fit for this year's Big Ten West?
This year? Oh, my. I don't know if there's been a program with more turnover than Washington, but there's a few other candidates out there. Colorado,
fair. I love it. That's great.
I mean, for better or worse, they still have their same coach. I can't quite say that up here in Seattle, but I mean, I'm still fairly optimistic. Jed Fish is a capable coach, did good things at Arizona, and it's really hard to judge because you don't have that historical gauge and kind of feel for what the conference has done in the years leading up. You know, I can make a case for, oh, well, they're going to slot in and get 9 or 10 wins and be pretty darn good because I think the offense can really show out. But I can also make the case that, oh, they're going to struggle to adapt in a Big Ten that's about physicality and running the ball and defense, and they're going to go 4 wins. My truthful feeling is it's going to be kind of mediocre, to say the least. It's anything feels like coming down off a 14-win season, but I think 7 to 8 wins is realistic. You know, everyone has a tough schedule. There are no cupcake schedules in the Big Ten. Like Washington has USC, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan, and Iowa. Like there are no easy schedules, and even games against like Rutgers and Maryland. Like we still have upsets that could trip you up. You know, Washington is famous for going down to Arizona and losing in the desert. So I think there's a lot of positives to be made, but this isn't quite the Huskies' year. I think
7 or 8, you think?
Yeah, I think 7 to 8 wins. I think Oregon's obviously set up well. You know, it pains me to say it, but they're set up really well. I don't think they quite win the conference, but they have outstanding talent. USC, you know, got some turnover from Caleb Williams, but let's see what kind of magic Lincoln Riley can spin. And UCLA, I think, is in a similar position from, you know, a different perspective as UW. You're trying to build something, step into a new conference, and be respectable. You know, bowl game should be an attainable goal for all 4 of these schools going in my opinion.
All right, thanks, Coach. What do you think?
I think for USC, September 21st is determining factor for the season. And I mean, I hate to put it all in one game, but it's based on one game, right?
Who are they playing? Sorry,
they go to Michigan.
They go to Michigan and they play in the big house, right? So that's the games. As the SC should be walking in the game 2-0. Michigan should be walking to that game 2-0. It's unfortunate that they scheduled it so early in the season, but that right there is the measuring stick, right? They instantly put you against the big boy. They say, here you go. You guys want to come? Here it is, Michigan, USC. That's the determining factor. After that, they have, you know, they play Wisconsin at home. They got Penn State at home. You know, they're playing some big logo schools in the conference, and it just all comes down to Michigan, and that determines if you could keep the locker room or if you lose it, right? Last year, they lost the locker room, but I see if they beat Michigan, I see a very good season. Maybe undefeated. They got to play Washington. They got to play UCLA. But 10 to 12 wins is likely, and I see a playoff berth for sure.
So 10, I'm putting you on the spot. So if they win 10 games, does Lincoln Riley keep his job?
Yeah, Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley, how long did they give Jimbo? 4 years?
Yeah, I don't think it matters at this point. The money for coaches is just ridiculous. So they'll write them a check to get rid of him if they
100%. Everybody forgets that about USC. They'll be the exact same guys on the field doing this.
That's right.
With a check to get Lincoln Riley out of there. But he won't be on the hot seat. He won't be on the hot seat.
So what if he wins 7 games?
He'll be warm. It'll be
Okay, all right.
It'll be
Scorching.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. How about UCLA? What do you think, Jamal?
Yeah, I think, going into this conference, look, I think UCLA brings back actually a ton quietly. Quarterback Ethan Garbers is now 4 years in the system. I think he's going to do really well. They bring back J. Michael Sturdivant, Logan Loya as wide receivers. They bring back their top 2 running backs. They got a really nice secondary. The question is, how are they going to be on the offensive and defensive lines? Last year, the offensive line was average. This year, they got a couple guys, Unajay from UNL, from Louisville. They got a few guys to sort of reinforce, but I don't know if there's a step function improvement there. They're about the same on the offensive line. And then defensive line, that front 7 was dynamic last year. Leatu Latu was a 15th pick in the NFL draft. Grayson,
you're welcome.
Murphy.
Yeah, Washington.
Exactly. No, we love them and thank you. But I think the trenches play is going to be critical. I think it's a 6 to 7 win type of season for UCLA. But I think given the experience that they have at the skill position, they should be able to kind of get to that 6-7 win number. But they're going to struggle against the better teams in the trenches. And for SC, I think no Caleb this year. They're loaded at wide receiver. Got some good running backs. I think similar questions on the offensive line for USC this year as well. And then the big question is going to be no Alex Grinch. DeAnton Lynn,
Yes.
Ironically enough, the UCLA defensive coordinator, comes to now USC.
Right,
he goes from $1
right.
million a year to $2 million a year. How much of it was the Leatu Latus and the players of UCLA, and how much of it was DeAnton Lynn is going to be the big question. But I think when you put it all together, I think SC's a 9-3 team.
So 9-3, and you said 6 or 7 for UCLA.
Yep.
Okay, just so you know, I'm not recording this. I don't care what your things are. I'm not going to call you on it.
I actually care. I'm going to find you guys in LA and hold you responsible.
We need to talk about this later, Jamal. 9-3. We need to talk about this later.
Rock and Rant, you're going to represent Oregon. What is Oregon's record first year in the Big Ten?
Oh man, like if it was Pac-12, 11 wins to me was that what that team is. I'm going to say that they're a 10+ win team still. They're just loaded, and they've been rolling for a second, and planes are okay when Nike's paying for them.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. Oregon is the brand, right? That's what they paid for. They wrote a check and they picked up a big brand. Without Nike, we all know, if we know anything about Oregon's football team, they didn't start winning games till about 98. So Kelly Smith, right? He came in, won some games. Before that, Washington used to use them as a punching bag, right? Yep. They were not the greatest team. So it'll be interesting to see now what kind of team Nike can purchase to put on the field. So that'll be interesting to see. Oregon, as far as I'm concerned, they're kind of like SMU in the back of my mind. I know that pisses a lot of people off, but I think Oregon, well, I remember when Oregon used to be, I'm from Washington, right? I grew up in Washington. I'm a Washington State fan. And I remember when Oregon was not all that in a bag of chips. Anyway.
Bomber, what if I told you USC has 7 Phil Knights?
Well, I think I know that. I just take it for granted, though, right? The difference is USC has been institutional for 70 years. Oregon's been institutional for about 24, 25. That's the difference.
I got you.
So,
no,
otherwise, if you're just going on recent success, they'd be a blue blood, right? Except for winning a national championship, they've done everything else right.
No, I was just saying more of, I think Phil Knight is willing to open the wallet, and we just had a show about this recently. Like me and Jamal had about an hour-long show about this. Like Phil Knight will open the wallet for athletics. USC has these billionaires, and they want to see what my ROI is on me opening the wallet, right?
Right.
Another reason why Miami and USC are very alike. Everyone thinks it was John Ruiz a few years ago or Nevin Shapiro, that are the money people, but there's like literally 7 billionaires behind Miami athletics when they think the time is right, and the guys, 2 of them own, brought Messi over. So people have
on top of Messi, you also have 2 Live Crew back there, right?
Oh yeah,
don't forget the 2 Live Crew. Yeah,
Luther.
I'm the oldest guy here by about 20 years, so I remember all these real stories. I actually saw them live. Anyway,
Bomber, the one thing quickly I'll just say is, I also worry a little bit about USC sometimes kind of resting on their laurels. You made the point of USC being an institutional brand, no question about it, but people forget. I mean, it was some tough sledding 20 years before Pete Carroll showed up.
Of course.
And Pete Carroll was sixth choice of the administration. Right. And then, 02 to 08 was just dynamite. Obviously, it was the face of college football. And then since 08, it's been kind of mediocre. And so, when you kind of look back 40, 45 years, we're sort of living off of this 7-year period of USC football for 45 years. And so It's really important that Lincoln gets this right and gets this right quickly, because I think we can all agree when you sort of lose it, it's really hard to get it back, especially with kind of this domino effect of, and kind of the quicksand with NIL and transfer portal and all of the collectives. So there's a lot of urgency for USC these next 1, 2, 3 years as well.
It's not just USC. It's not just Washington. It's not just UCLA. Every year you're rebuilding your team with NIL.
Yep.
Every year you have to re-recruit players that you've been spending time on for maybe 5, 6 years. It's just incredible how much work they have to do to keep their teams together. Let's get to some comments here really quick. I want to make sure everybody knows we're listening to them. Do you guys know Peek Around the Corner, Greg Flugar? I hope you do. If you do not, he is the OG of realignment coverage on YouTube and Twitter. I would tell everybody to look him up on Twitter as #PATC, and that's FLUG Empire. That's Flug Empire. Peek Around the Corner. His comment tonight is Big Ten programs will be growing their grass long when Oregon, Washington, and USC visits.
It's all turf now. They all have turf now.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Minnesota doesn't, right? Minnesota's got real grass. Don't they? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think so.
They had real grass. But anyways, what do you guys think about that? That's the rumor, right? One thing they have is speed. Team speed on the Pacific Coast versus what I would call much tougher defenses on the east side. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, see, so a lot of people get into that and they say, oh, the Big Ten is so big and so tough and this and that. Well, the biggest bowl game of the year featured the Pac-10 and the Big Ten, or featured the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. The most winning school in the biggest bowl game of the year is USC against those Big Ten schools. So, like, when you pull out numbers and start showing records, like, where's the threat for real? Because they played your best school and gave us the best shot. And
that's a one-off, though, Coach.
Okay, so you go off a one-off. So what about when USC went to Ohio State and Ohio State came to them and beat them twice, right?
Yeah, I'm not devaluing USC at all.
No,
I'm just saying there is a different mindset from the teams on the West Coast. Otherwise, let me put it to you differently. How has the defense been at USC for the last 5 years?
It has not been great, and I can agree. I can agree to you on that.
So you could pick. So you could pick any moment in time and say they were better than they were better. But at the end of the day, what we all get is great football games that used to be Holiday Bowl or Rose Bowl. Now are weekly games. I mean, that's incredible, right?
That is great. That is great. I think. But I just think, like, Ohio State is fast. Like, Ohio State plays fast football, right? They don't play punch mouth football.
Well, I don't know about that. I think they do both. Perception is reality, right?
But I think there's a little. This is what I'm saying. I think there's a little bit too much emphasis on the Big Ten plays big football and the West Coast plays fast in the grass football. I mean, when it comes down to it. And raw reality is Jimmys and Joes. Who's guys are better Jimmys? Who has the better Joes on that day? And which way does the ball bounce? I can't put it on the football's different and the football's going to be different here and football's going to be different there. Who's the best team on that Saturday? That's all it really comes down to.
And we won't know until they play those games.
100%.
Yeah. Here's our first super chat. And by the way, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. This is the first show that we're doing with these guys, and having Coach here, having Jamal here. We're going to do more of these collabs. Look for us going over on their shows and helping them grow their online product. But I really want to thank them for both being here. And everybody that's watching, if we don't get to all your questions unless they're super chats, please don't take it personal. We're just really busy, and this is the first of what I hope is many, many shows where we can get to those other questions. Chris, for $2 super chat, says, I think the Big Ten go to pods for regional scheduling. He says sense, but I think didn't they say they're not doing pods for scheduling?
Yeah, they're not doing that.
No, not right now. But I think, Chris, I think there's going to be sort of a practicality here at some point where you could be kind of going to, even a micro divisional model, in the Big Ten. It could be just four divisions potentially. And those four kind of have a bracket to determine who the Big Ten champion is, just from a logistics standpoint. So
Right.
I think right now it's totally open, but let's check back in 2, 3, 4 years and see what that looks like. But I think there's a lot of credibility there.
Yeah,
All right.
we also have to
Go ahead,
remember
Phil.
expansion isn't done either. We have to see what happens with the ACC and the SEC,
Yes.
and then we have to see who else the Big Ten brings in. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
also-
there's no doubt about that. And the realignment game continues to pay it forward. That's how we make money, right? That's how we
For
do
sure.
our shows, is on realignment and rumors and all that fun stuff. Rock and Rant's been waiting. I know he has a sophisticated question for everybody. Let's try to keep our short
I'm going to
answers a
keep
little
it
bit
really
shorter,
short
though.
so we can
Okay.
get through a ton of questions because there's a lot in there. I
Right.
do want to also get your guys' view on all that noise we just talked about, that now that you're sitting pretty and just worrying about how long the flight's going to be. As it relates to the change of the conferences, quick hitters, and not the obvious of Ohio State, one team in the Big Ten that you're excited about that might not be obvious that you were looking forward to establishing a rivalry, and maybe one out of the Pac-12 that you're kind of bummed about that maybe people wouldn't expect you to be bummed that's at least not going to be a regular thing anymore for each
Yeah,
team.
I can take that one. So, I had some conversations with some folks kind of close to the realignment, and there has been an active desire by the Big Ten Conference to make USC Penn State a rivalry. There's kind of a perception that obviously the reality, Michigan, Ohio State, that's kind of pristine. Penn State's kind of been that historically third team that hasn't really had a rival. And just given the fan bases, given the last couple of Rose Bowls, 08 and 17 have been so good, SC Penn State is kind of a rivalry I think the Big Ten would really like to see happen. And that's why they've scheduled for the next 5 years a USC Penn State game. So I think that's going to be one to sort of watch for. I kind of think UCLA Michigan State is going to be kind of a sneaky good rivalry because they both kind of have that little brother chip on their shoulder. And so they're just going to be kind of angry all the time. And I think UCLA Michigan State, I think is going to be a really fun one. And then I think the rivalries that I think folks are going to miss tremendously. Look, USC Stanford was a special rivalry. When you talk about the weekender, each alumni base coming, taking the 1 hour flight to the respective cities. That was very special and played some incredible games. And then I think UCLA, kind of playing, Washington also was very special for UCLA fans over the years. They still kind of get that. But I think UCLA is going to actually really miss Cal. That brotherly kind of rivalry, especially with all this Calimony stuff. So UCLA, Cal, USC, Stanford, I think we're going to miss.
Okay. How about you, Coach?
Actually, I'm the Penn State one. I can see that becoming a rival. Like
I love that game.
Yeah,
Those games are awesome.
But the one I think is going to be a really good rival, believe it or not, I think Wisconsin, when they have peak years, when Wisconsin has peak years and SC and Wisconsin have to play, that'll be a really good game. And the rivalry I'm going to miss is Stanford. I'm going to miss the Stanford rivalry because the weekender is a great time, man. And for those in the West Coast, if you have to go to USC or UCLA or Stanford and Cal to understand the weekender, and just to explain, like the weekender is pretty much if we playing at Stanford, all the students go to Palo Alto and they have a big time the whole weekend, and all the players stay back and drive back down with their friends or whatever, and you sleep on a buddy's couch or something like that. So that's going to be a big one that's going to miss. Also, the Oregon State game. A lot of people don't understand Corvallis, Oregon, unless you've been to Corvallis, Oregon, where you take that road 45 minutes from Eugene, you hit that left, 10 minutes later, you're in Corvallis. On Saturday night, there's 40,000 people there, as loud as they possibly could be, and it's just crazy in that stadium. So I'll miss the SC Oregon State games and the weekenders.
Very good. Pickles, do you have a question for these guys?
I guess kind of on that note, I mean, we all can reminisce about Pac-12 rivalries, but do you guys see USC and UCLA doing some creative scheduling like Oregon and Washington have done to preserve some of those rivalries going forward? I assume USC is going to find a way to fit in Stanford if possible.
Yeah, Sergeant Pickles, I think they're going to try. I think it's tough now because you got that baked in Notre Dame game, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging. And I think, look, USC has taken a lot of pride in being the only program in the history of college football that has never played a non-Division I school in a non-conference game. So, but that may change with kind of the depth of schedule and and kind of the margin for error. So I think they'd love to kind of do Stanford. I don't know how realistic it would be. I think with the Calimony and all of this stuff, you got to do UCLA Cal. I mean, this is kind of the ultimate two brothers that just dislike each other to no end. I mean, the reason UCLA was named a Bruin was because it was a baby bear. It was it was supposed to be the satellite campus of Berkeley. It was the southern branch of the University of California. So to be this sort of satellite campus and then be what it's become, it's like the equivalent today of like University of Phoenix going and becoming Harvard. So there's, UCLA's got that chip on their shoulder, especially with all this Calimony. So UCLA Cal should be preserved, and I think they're going to try.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Coach, you have a quick one?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I was just, no.
All right, no problem. I wasn't sure if Jamal was going to take the answer for both schools or not. So
I tend to do that. Sorry, Coach.
No, you're good. I mentioned mine already about.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure I had it covered. That's all. Let's get to some comments. By the way, this hour went by way too fast. I appreciate everybody that's been watching us. This is going to be one of many. I look for us to be doing a lot of collaborations back and forth. There's a lot of synergies with the coverage of USC and UCLA, and we really appreciate everybody being here tonight for this introductory show on the Bomb3r's hit list. All right, Hall of Fame college football with Jason and the coach. He is an Oklahoma guy, so he definitely has thoughts on Lincoln Riley and USC. He's been a member for 3 months. He says, "Yay, the Little Brother Bowl." What do you guys think about that?
What is he referring to?
Is that UCLA, Michigan State, what we were saying? Or
I think he's talking about USC, UCLA. I could be wrong.
I don't know what he's referring to, so I can't comment on it.
All right. Well, then clear that up for us, Jason, so I can figure out actually what you're saying there. I was hoping somebody else knew what it was, so that's on me. All right. Let's get to some of these quick hitter questions or comments. Conundrum says UCLA versus Nebraska would be a good rivalry. Boy, it definitely be different.
For sure. I think, Nebraska is I think a program that a lot of us on the West Coast really admire, frankly, because just their ability to sell out every game, whether the team is good, not good. I mean, just the passion of that fan base, the conviction, the loyalty is something you just have to admire as a person. So I think it would be great to kind of get back in there. Both schools similar in the sense that there were some glory years, massive glory years for Nebraska in the 90s. 80s and 90s was a glory period for UCLA, trying to get that spark back. So how better than to get that spark back against one another? So I think that could be a really special one as well.
I think it's a good one to consider for sure.
I vote real quick for UCLA, Indiana. Is it basketball season yet?
That's fantastic. I love that very much. Timothy Green, one of our members, says Pete Carroll broke every college football rule in the book and got away with it because he was backed with huge money. How they won? That's how they won. Not saying he wasn't a pretty good coach, and so. Just so everybody knows, me and Pickles are a little bit on his side because he went to the Seahawks, which is where we wanted him. But, Coach, what do you think about that?
Myth. All myth. It was a myth. I will tell you this. Now that he's gone, and he did play in the gray with some recruiting things, not as far as money, but as far as communication and going to see kids. He did play in the gray, and he stretched the rules a little bit. But as far as people getting money and the way that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart is doing it, I never got my check. So, I mean, Pete owed me some money then. I need to go talk to Pete because I never got my check. So
I think they need their national championship back is what I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that was anyway. Let's see another comment. Jamie Thornton, one of our loyal members, says for sure at Congo, the fact UNC athletics have become such deep in debt is insane. Tim Donnelly even went nuts on his radio show about it. I don't know how much we will see, but behind closed doors. And then she continues on. I know, Rock, you wanted to bring this up. We can quickly dab into North Carolina. Their money troubles really reminds me of UCLA and kind of now where they're thinking. Go ahead.
And a shout out to Greg Flugar, who would say, at least UNC is trying to do it preemptively as opposed to creating penalties after the fact. But yeah, just how, I guess very quickly, how do you guys see what's going on in the ACC compared to what you saw there in terms of the money side, and also just like your feelings on expansion in general for the Big Ten now that you're now going to be Big Ten members, and if there are any priorities in the ACC.
You want me to take this one, Jamal?
I think we both can. If you want, you start.
All right. So here's the deal, right? So the ACC pretty much the ACC is dead. They're on life support. We all know that. It's no secret. The ACC is on life support. The question starts to become with schools like UNC. Are you going to focus on basketball? Or are you going to become a football school? If you want to be a basketball school, UNC and Duke goes to the Big Ten. It's simple. It's easy and done. We know where Clemson's going. We know where Florida State's going. We know where Miami's going. You have to start questioning schools like Louisville, Wake Forest, all those middle schools in the conference that are always in the middle, but Louisville who has ebbs and flows and can become a really good football team, but then they have a bad football team. Where do they go? Where do you put Wake Forest as far as regionally, things like that? We understand it's a dead conference. Now you got to ask Cal and Stanford where they're going because now they're in the ACC. Do they? You know what I mean? So those are the questions. So UNC has to really ask this question, and me and Jamal talked about this before. Same thing with UCLA. You have to ask yourself, what am I going to be? What am I going to focus my money in, and where am I going to go? To me personally, I think UNC Duke goes to the Big Ten because the basketball conference is a very good basketball conference. They're able to compete there, and that's where they're going to make their money. If they're going to focus on football, the SEC is where they go.
Jamal?
Yeah, I agree with Coach. I mean, the ACC in so many ways is a precedent setter. I mean, when you talk about a school like Florida State here, not just kind of on the lawsuit side, but trying to get JP Morgan Chase and private equity money to sort of fund their football program. I mean, you can tell they're really thinking outside the box and they want to get out of the ACC as quickly as possible. I think culturally, Duke, UNC, ironically enough, Stanford, Cal, Virginia, I think they make a ton of sense in the Big Ten, especially when you talk about kind of the academics, you talk about basketball. It makes a ton of sense to go to the Big Ten. And then I think Clemson, Miami, Florida State, they feel like SEC already. So, and then it's going to be kind of, I think those are probably the schools that each conference takes. And then you wonder about the rest. I mean, are the rest going to be in Oregon State, Washington State territory? And we just kind of get to this Super 2 world, which everyone's anticipating going to happen in the next couple of years.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that question. Thanks, Jamie. Just to sign this off with Greg, he says, great panel, great show. So for him to be giving you guys props for being on the show, that's a really good thing. I would encourage both of you to reach out to Greg. He's a fantastic guy. And he's the guy that broke the USC to the Big Ten over 2 years ago now. And yeah, he knows his stuff. So Greg,
he knows his stuff. We'll appreciate it, Greg. Thank you. Means a lot coming from you.
Let's see here. Oh, sorry, we already did that. This is a question for Pickles. Chris, the SEC and the Big Ten let greed dictate their actions. Okay, Washington vibes here. Florida State just cut the ACC's throat. So the future looks bleak for those not in those two conferences. You've talked about this a lot in our realignment stuff. What do you think there?
Oh, man. I mean, greed is definitely dictating actions. Let's not get it twisted. This is about football and TV dollars. And I know hoops is a great thing on the side, but it brings, relatively small in relation to college football. Like, for example, Kansas football brings in more money than Kansas hoops every single year just by the nature of being college football. I've had kind of conflicting opinions about what the ACC is going to look like. I don't think it's set in stone where the majority of those schools are going to end up. I would tend to agree that Florida State, Clemson, and Miami and UNC will find homes in the two big conferences. Now, what order I think can vary a little bit. SEC kind of is the unknown variable. It seems like they don't really want to expand, but they're going to have to, because the Big Ten is forcing their hand. The Big Ten is just going to challenge them and say, hey, we're going to take all the valuable remaining schools. And if you don't want that to happen, looks like you're going to have to expand too. I would say the ACC can live on, but it's not going to be a power conference anymore. It's going to be something possibly even less than what the Big 12 is today. I've had thoughts about it. Is it an all academic conference with Cal, Stanford, Virginia, Duke? Do they add like a Rice? Do they just lean super heavy into being a second Ivy League? I don't know.
Let's not get it twisted. That's Immaculate's idea. He's been saying it for probably 18 months. Sorry. No, that's
Apologies
okay.
if I didn't mention that. Him and I were on the same train of thought with.
No, it's fine. I just want to make sure we gave credit where credit's due.
Yep, absolutely. But I don't think there's a path forward for the ACC as it stands to be considered among the power conferences. I think you're going to go down to 3 very quickly, and possibly 2 or 1, depending on what the future really holds. But you're going to have the SEC, Big 10, and then the Big 12 sitting just underneath them as the true power conferences very soon.
Let's go around the horn. Everybody can answer that. Brock, what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm so biased. I just want Miami to get into Big 10. I don't really care where anybody else goes. I mean, if they want to go to the moon, I'm happy. I just only thing I care about is Miami's in the Big 10. I kind of would accept the SEC, even though I don't really. Selfishly, I want the Big 10 because UCLA and USC are here, right? And I just want the Florida State rivalry to continue. And everything else, if it dies, it dies. Don't care.
That's hilarious. Okay, Coach, what do you think about that? Really quick.
About the conferences?
Yeah, and because Pickles they're going to be 2-1.
There's going to be 2 conferences, and it's going to be the Blue Bloods, and there's going to be the rest of them. At that, okay. We can even go deeper if y'all want to have a show on this. I think that the NCAA is legit done, and we talked about this on my show before. Like, right. I think the NCAA is done. The question is who's going to make the jump first, and who has the enough weight to make the jump and bring the rest of the schools along with them and say we don't no longer need you for football.
Ohio State and Alabama.
We'll have to see about Alabama because they have a coaching change, so we have to see what happens to their program.
Yeah, it's the institution, it's not the football team. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's really cool. Jamal, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the big 2 like we talked about and everybody else. And I think the other lens to perhaps think about this is what are the schools that are willing to prioritize football over all other sports too? And I think there's kind of an acknowledgement that to kind of go all in on football in terms of what the resources it's going to take, you're going to have to cut some of the Olympic sports. You right. might have to sort of clear that out entirely. What is your institution? What's your institutional culture, your values, your philosophy, your pillars going to allow for that to happen? So I think sometimes the big 2, we just think about it purely from best football teams, but I think the lens is also willingness to be big time in football moving forward.
I think that level of commitment, you're exactly right. You have to be all in or nothing. You're not going to be a school that can sort of put their toe in, but aren't willing to invest and spend the money. All right, guys, I told you an hour. I have already kept you 10 minutes after. I appreciate you being here tonight. Let me get to a couple more comments, and then we're going to bump our Discord. So after this show tonight, everybody, we're going to be moving to our Discord channel. Rock, you want to tell everybody how that works?
Yeah, we just posted the link to the free Discord in the chat. It's also in the description below the video. We're rapidly approaching a good number of people where there'll be a conversation going all the time. And the more we get people in, the more conversations and separate topics we can do as we move into the season and EA Sports. So if you haven't joined, please do so. It's free. Get your friends to join if they're not really watching the show live, but they see it later. The more people we have there, the more times we can talk when we're not on air with the show. So looking forward to seeing more of you join.
And we're going to do that right after the show. So once this ends, in fact, Rock, you just want to quickly sign out and you can head over to Discord and we'll jump there.
Sure. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Do you want to say anything on your way out?
No, just thanks to the guys for joining us. You would never know that Coach played at USC in 2009. No way did he play at USC in 2009. No culture bid, nothing at all. But no, in all seriousness, thank you guys both. It was super great.
We're going to come back to that in a different show. I promise. We just didn't have time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys. This was a blast.
Hang on. Don't sign out quite yet. Let me get to a couple more comments. Just so you know, Jason was talking about UCLA, Michigan State. So
Jason, he nailed it. Yep. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Jason, by the way, has his own channel, Hall of Fame College Football. It's Oklahoma all the time, he and the coach. So I would encourage everybody to go over there and check that show out. And definitely you guys now, SEC, Big Ten, can have some USC, Oklahoma, some really good conversations. 2 more things here. We got another member for 4 months. That's Coy. Appreciate you being here, Coy. Need a USC MSU rivalry again with USC Michigan State. That's interesting.
That would be the ultimate mascot rivalry.
I was about to say that actually works.
Spartan. That's the winning mascot rivalry right there. Get the mascots to fight before the game. That'll be must see.
Wow, I didn't realize that had so much run. Good job. That's excellent. And then we have a $5 super chat from Jason. Jason again saying the SEC has more Final Four appearances than the Big Ten these days. Wouldn't be so sure about that, Coach. I think he's responding to
about the basketball.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe.
You want to respond?
No, I mean, maybe that might be the move for him. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just strictly my opinion. I just see
sure.
Just it makes sense for Duke and North Carolina regionally to go to the Big Ten because that just makes sense to me. But they maybe that might work out for him. That makes sense.
Yeah. Right now, Timothy Green says I got the coach fired up, didn't I?
Nah. You want to see fired up? Go to my channel. You can see some fired up.
Yeah, definitely. So, Sergeant Pickles, I'm sorry you didn't get a lot of time tonight. I hope you don't take it personally.
No, it is what it is.
Do you want to go ahead and tell these guys about your show and kind of how you guys could work together?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to link up with you guys, and I do the Big West Mafia show on Mondays as part of this, and we, obviously focus on the 4 schools going into the Big Ten. We do all, big college football news, but it's more just a focus on the West Coast, and a lot of our audience are Big 12 fans, as you could imagine, but they want a West Coast perspective, and it's it's kind of a forgotten area of the country, it seems like, for college football, but I would love to have you guys on anytime to preview USC, UCLA, but just as a guest or anything related to that. Really appreciate having more perspectives other than just me with my purple Husky hat on. So hopefully we can link up in the future. But again, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Sergeant Pickles, and we would
it.
love that. That sounds terrific.
Awesome.
I think you guys could be on each other. I mean, I can just see a future where you guys are doing a ton of stuff together. All right, Coach, I'm going to give you the first chance to sort of sign out tonight. Tell everybody where your channel is and anything else you want to about what you're doing.
So my channel is on the LA Football Network, LAFootballNetwork.com. I do the Salute to Troy podcast with my good man, Madman Jamal Magny, live from the LAFB Lounge. He's always in the LAFB Lounge. I'm not. I'm normally at the Coliseum if you watch our show. But yeah, we just right now we're just talking about where people rank. But in the season, like I said, we get really in depth. Great conversation. We get into the X's and O's. We get into the chemistry of the team, and we're always telling the truth. There's no lies on our show. We don't fanboy. Even wins, we sometimes aren't good shows. So, LAFootballNetwork.com. Salute to Troy podcast on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on wherever you listen to the app. So go check us out.
Jamal.
Yeah, and Bomber, just add that, LAFBnetwork.com. That's where we're at. And, on YouTube, Spotify. So just search for Salute to Troy on YouTube, and then search for the Bruin Bible for the UCLA show. And then, if you're Rams and Chargers fans, we got the Rams Skinny and we got Chargers Unleashed as well. So LAFBnetwork.com. We got merch, articles, podcast, the whole deal, and excited to grow our audience. So really grateful for that.
Excellent. Our audience is fantastic. They're the most loyal out there. And honestly, the more collaborations we do across the country, people different. I like that idea, different perspectives. Right. I love having people come in that are opposite me. When I got my channel started, I brought in Wild Ute. I'm a BYU fan.
Yeah.
He's a Utah fan, but I did that on purpose, right? You want to expand your sort of thinking. And so you guys have been fantastic tonight. I really, really appreciate the time. Looking forward to doing more stuff with you. I'm happy to come on your shows anytime you want, and we'll definitely be doing some more collaborations.
That sounds great. Well, thanks so much, guys. This has just been an absolute blast.
All right, hang around until after the show's over. On chat for just a second. Pickles, I'll give you the final word.
Oh, I got to go my off in left field. I appreciate our guest being here to recognize the forever Pac-12 champion Washington Huskies. But it's been awesome, guys. I appreciate you coming on so much. And we're going to have a lot of games going forward in the future. And I'm pretty excited that we still going to play our friends from LA in going forward.
All right. Well, let's sign this out. Everybody jump over to Discord. Make sure you follow us over there. We're going to continue the conversation. And that's a lot more back and forth. So if you want to get more of your comments out, Discord's the best place to do it. Other than that, everybody have a great night. Stay out of trouble, and we'll see you later. Peace.
Want to become